Welcome back to another episode of the Cousin Cecil Show, a bonus episode where it's again Wednesday. That means I'm with another comic book creator, and then this is a very special one just because this is our first artist in the comic book spectrum to have on. She has a new book that just came out. She's part of the anthology book for DC Pride Month, like the DC Pride issue 1. She also did do some work, it says, on her Comixology for the AAPI Heritage Month 1, 2. But also, I'm still juggling on if this is going to come out on the day of Resonant issue 10 or not. But obviously, no, I'd like to welcome to the show Skylar Patridge. How you doing?
Doing good. Thank you for having me on. I didn't know I was the first artist, so that's super cool. Honor.
It goes into, yes, you are the first one to nicely reply back. That's
awesome. Well, thank you for reaching out. It means a lot.
Yeah, no, and then let's just more get into let's hear your background of like how you got into comics, because was it like the main goal? Was it like a side thing that you found out about? You know what I mean? Let's hear your backstory.
Comics was something that I had always been interested in. I grew up reading them, and it's something I'd always been artistically inclined. So I was always drawing growing up. And that was kind of because I was reading comics and watching shows like X-Men and Batman, the animated series, like that kind of stuff. I was always gravitating toward more illustrative comic book style. So that was kind of something that I always liked doing, but it was a pipe dream, I think, growing up. I had very supportive parents as far as art goes, but I didn't know how to get into comics. It was kind of this nebulous world that other people did. It was something other people did.
Yeah.
And so I stuck with art for a while and never really thought about going into comics, but eventually found myself working in a job where I was meeting some people that did it. They did indie comics, or they were just doing, comic art, stuff like that. And so that kind of started the ball rolling of thinking, well, these people are doing it. Maybe I can explore this a little bit further. And then started going to conventions, started meeting more people, got asked to work in some anthologies here and there. And it just kind of was that growing snowball effect.
Yeah, I was also I'm getting around the same ballpark of just age, because I've listened to other ones that are been into the industry a little bit before. They're like, yeah, they just went to a comic shop and someone pointed, oh yeah, they're doing like Marvel was doing like a contest, jump in into the brand by setting in your work through this, and they're like, oh yeah, that's how I got in. And then maybe it was the bubble of like the imploding before, like Marvel almost went to bankruptcy back in the 90s and stuff, but then the industry has changed, so now it's like that hustle. I think in my eyes I've noticed that there's a lot of hustling and grinding of like interacting, going to conventions, finding out like the person who runs like Aftershock, someone who runs Vault, so whoever runs that. So like I'm just more curious. It is very interesting. And then also I have come to realization, because of listening to writers and seeing, I'm like, it's very interesting to see how the artist does it, because I think you guys are definitely the ones having the heavy lifting of moving the story. Because in these episodes, we've been talking to writers and seeing like process / like I've been figuring out how to do the script of a comic, of like how much is it broken down for the artist to read that their initial idea is. Then of course I know it's a team effort, so obviously you might have an idea like this is a better way to express it to the reader. How was your first experience in that when you got like the opportunity with the anthology? How does that work? Like, especially since you're trying to more, I'm assuming you're like show your work so you can like, get more opportunities and stuff.
Yeah. I think for me, I generally say that I kind of fell in a side door to comics as an artist. Not because I wasn't open to it, but and I think this is something that you hear a lot of other comic creators say is there really isn't a door. Like there
Yeah.
really isn't like a clear cut way to get in. And I think growing up, I read a lot of, how to draw comics the Marvel way and a variety of books and telling you how to make comic work, how to put together a portfolio to show people. And there was kind of this step process of like, well, you do the work and then you go to conventions and you have your portfolio book and you go to a table and you ask for a portfolio review. And I think I've done that once,
Right.
honestly. Because of the way that the world is now with social media, you can have your portfolio website, you can have Patreon, you've got Twitter, you've got a variety of different options, in getting your work in front of people. And so I think when I got the script, my first script, from somebody else who had written it, I don't think I knew, knew what I was doing. Um, I took it very literally, I think, when I first started making comics, as far as panel breakdowns and what they wanted in any panel. And the more that I did it, and kind of started to find my voice as far as artistic narrative and how I wanted to tell the story in tandem with the writer, then I started to get a better sense for, in my experience, a little bit of flexibility in scripting. And every artist and every writer is different. Some writers give a lot of detail, some are super sparse, and they want the artist to kind of throw their spin into it. I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing writers who have been super open to my input. I tend to like kind of a middle ground. Like I want to know what you want to see, but be open to me throwing some stuff in there too. Cause I always like little extra beats here and there, which, some people don't care for. They want a concise story. I always like to go for the little emotional beats and little, kind of drawing that moment out longer in certain places and pushing action forward in other places. So I like having a little bit more control in pacing, on a page to page situation. So.
Right. That goes into how you said you finding your own voice, because I would assume that would be the way. Like at first you probably like try to play it safe, just go by what the paperwork said, don't feel comfortable, then you start opening up your own self and you're obviously understanding more your talents and all that stuff, because that's also a very amazing thing for your situation because of your experience. We'll talk about Resonant. You jumped on to the series on the second volume.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to admit, there was a moment in time when I was first reading the first volume, and then I got into 6. I didn't even comprehend it was a different artist just yet. So that goes into the idea of like you got into that, like obviously you're in the experience now to, I don't want to say it's not copy, but the idea that you've put your own spin on it. Because after now, like while I was waiting for this call, I was looking at issue 5 just for a reference. I'm like, okay, this artist, because I can't remember the name offhand, he does have a style that obviously is carried through the whole series. But then you get to your issue 6 starting, you actually show those intentional, like just in like parts of like just showing a little bit more nose line compared to previous, showing a little bit more, like in particular, like on one of your tweets, you have like, like coming up for me, like you had like the Women of Marvel, She-Hulk, and you just have her do a little bit of a bite lip from her. I'm assuming it's a fight.
Yeah.
But just the idea of those little things, I see that might be that is your style of like those little things you said, the things that people don't think about until the heat of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate that. It was really cool.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
No, and then yes, and just more because we'll keep it spoiler free because I'm not sure if it's coming out on the day of. No, and issue 10 was obviously, like I told you, very cool. I love the idea that the girl did with the flamethrower idea.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very cool
there's a very exciting double page spread in this that I think people will be very into. So
yes, and I do wish maybe Vault will maybe give the break, but then also call you guys back for maybe one more volume because it does leave.
I hope so. Yeah, DB and I've talked a little bit about future stuff, and I know he's got a whole third arc planned. So it's really kind of going to come down to, I think, people's enthusiasm for that second volume and getting people to pick it up. So.
Have you done anything on how would I word it? Like, have you done anything on the Kickstarter front that you're the owner of a creation yet? Maybe you picked up a writer and stuff.
Not yet. No, I've done little things for Kickstarters, or contributed to an anthology or did a pinup for something, but I've never actually been like the front runner of a Kickstarter yet. So,
Is that in the future? Because you seem like you're like, ah.
well, we'll see. I've got a project in the works right now. I've been teasing a little bit on social media, and it doesn't have a home yet. I think it has the potential to find a home. I hope so. People seem interested in it. But we're not opposed to taking it to Kickstarter, because we have an idea where we want it to go, and having that freedom, I guess. Kickstarter offers a lot of freedom to creators to stretch their legs into those stories. You can tell longer stories, you can tell stranger stories. And so worst comes to worst, which it wouldn't really be a worst case scenario, but if we can't find a publisher for it, Kickstarter could be in the future for me.
Because I'm getting also into, I've noticed also with artists of just looking from the outside looking in, you guys have maybe a hairpin more opportunities of like being able to, spread your wings, like you said, like for like DB, just for the idea, like, he's done Vault, but obviously you've done work with, again, it's anthologies, nothing. I don't, judging by your comicsology, have not seen a series yet, but you've done anthology work for Marvel, DC, and others. I just was more curious of what's the word I was going to say? Is that part of the industry now that involves there's this whole writing and getting a story that of your own? Is it just more now harder to get out there, and you have to rely on Kickstarter to then maybe get even like the support from a smaller publisher? We're not obviously talking about like the big two, but you know what I mean? Like, I've seen a lot of Kickstarters do well on crowdfunding, and then the publisher goes, yeah, we're here. We'll help you distribute it more if you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is definitely something I'm seeing more of.
Is that good or is that bad in the sense of, how would I word it? Because of course I understand the business sense that you still need an audience. And of course, Kickstarter shows there's a quote unquote audience. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like, is it harder to probably be a writer right now? Is it easier or compared to artist? I was curious.
I mean, comics is tricky just because there's definitely a division of labor. I think as far as easiness, that's a tricky word to tackle. I think writers generally wind up doing a lot of the legwork as far as being a front man, which is a lot of times why writers tend to get top billing on things. And I don't know. I think that it's harder as far as self-promoting yourself as a writer, because I have the flashy pages. Yeah, they might have taken me 3, 4, or 5 times as long to do versus the written page, but I can show that. And that's a flashy thing. And we love flashy stuff. It's an easier sell. So writers do have a hurdle to get over, in that you kind of just have your scripting and whatever maybe books you put together to show, like, well, this is what I've done. And so that is definitely challenging. So yeah, I think that each section of comic making has its own challenges. Like with colorists and letterers, they tend to get forgotten a lot, and both of them are so pivotal to everything. Colors can take a page from being really good to outstanding. Like that double page spread in Resonant is, yeah. I was proud of it when I sent it off. And then when Wordy sent it back with colors, I was like, this is 12 times better than anything I would have sent off black and white, and I love black and white comics, but every part is really, really crucial. And, letters especially, I think, get forgotten. We assume it's an easy thing. So I don't know. I think each section of comics, each role in comics has its own challenges. But I would say writing is definitely a harder sell as yourself as a writer, because you don't have that tangible thing to be like, here it is. This is what I can do.
No, right. And then just more curious because it goes into the little bit of my episodes I've been talking about writing and stuff. So that's just more understanding of that. And also I was more thinking of a funny question to ask you was without having, because again, I didn't know how many different writers you've worked with, and I didn't want to have you, I was going to say it as a joke, but like who had the best script you felt you had and who had the worst script, but you didn't have to say exactly which one was the one. You just say two names.
Oh, I won't throw anybody under the bus. No, I've honestly been really lucky with scripts. They're always a little different because everybody is a little different in how they approach a script. But I honestly can't say I've had any bad scripts. They always give me the information I need. And like I said, almost everybody I've worked with has been, I would say everybody I've worked with has been super open to my input. I think as far as ease of reading, DB's scripts were probably one of the easiest formatted and easiest to take in quickly. So yeah.
What is I guess your, I don't want to say inspiration, but like what is like your process? Like how do you get into the mode of like today I got to do this 2-page splash page or something? Like what is like how do you get into the mode of getting into those drawing modes? Because obviously I know there's probably some downtime and all that stuff. Because how long does it usually take? Let's say we'll go to one issue. Like how much work or days is it to get into one issue out? Like to say, hey, I'm going to send this off to the coloring.
Mm-hmm.
How much of time is that for you?
For me, from start to finish, I mean, ideally we're shooting, I think for Resonant, we were shooting for 5-ish weeks, on my end. So that's kind of an ideal, for me, because that takes in a week for layouts and planning. And then you've got that month to work on inks. Shit happens. Sometimes
right. No, yeah. Totally.
Sometimes you get hung up, I'll be honest. But yeah, that's usually 5 to 6 weeks, I think is about, where we tried to land with Resonant.
Okay. No, 5 to 6 weeks for one book to get ready to send to colorists and all that stuff. No, that's good to know. And then also, would there be any, I don't want to say class, but is there a part of being a artist for a comic book that you would tell young artists to go, hey, maybe you want to go into this certain class to help you like with storytelling, or is it with like, is there something that's not like on paper now? Like, oh yeah, you might want to go into maybe like a drama class or something so you can remember to put this into your own process of drawing.
I think one of the things that was I did it years ago, but I think it really helped in establishing some foundational understanding for myself was I took figure drawing classes a lot, when I was younger, when I was still in school. And, it wasn't for a major or anything. I just really wanted to learn how to draw anatomy well. I'd always been kind of gravitating towards comics, like I said. So I knew that I was going to need to know how to draw people really well. And so I think figure drawing is probably a really, really, important skill to try to learn, or at least get some experience in. Obviously you can, once you get those foundational skills in, I think it's awesome when you go and stylize it and add your touch to your work. Yeah, I think figure drawing is really good. I also used YouTube a ton. I taught myself how to color with YouTube. So yeah, I think now especially there's so many resources for young artists and not so young artists to figure out what avenues they want to go into.
Is there a target part of the anatomy that you should really remember to put in? Like, is it hard to do hands? Is it hard to do feet? You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's the thing about comics is because the story is the most important part. So learning where to go hard on stuff and where to cut yourself some slack is important. Like that's a skill in and of itself. is learning how to give you the most information, make it interesting and enjoyable to look at, but you're also not killing yourself. Like you're not going to draw 10 fingers every time
Yeah.
for 7 panels every page. Like that's going to kill you. So kind of learning, that's a skill set. And I think mostly just learning it by doing it, figuring out where you can give yourself some freedom, give yourself a little bit of a break in laying out pages and laying out the panel contents. So I love drawing hands, and feet are okay. I don't mind drawing feet. But I have had to kind of teach myself where to like step off the gas a little bit. Like you don't need to draw every hand in every panel because, you know, I'll hurt my own hands by going that hard in every panel.
No,
but for me, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, for me, I tend to focus on expressions, you know, going back to what you mentioned earlier, like that's really where I put all of my attention. So I may not do, you know, a beautiful hand every panel, but I'll really try to nail an expression if that's what the beat of the story is calling for.
No, and then also it goes into probably what you are teasing on Twitter with the two girls and the like the I was called love scene with the knife thing. That's some very like just shows even the detail that you put in just that little spots. It does show like you have you very locked into those body languages, and I really it obviously makes the page and the art like have its own life. It's kind of cool.
Thank you. Yeah. That's definitely something that I think I put a lot of my energy into because I'm a more visual minded person. I do like to write, but I find that now, especially because I work full time doing this, I'm constantly thinking visually and less in terms of words. So that I would say I wrote that, but I didn't actually. It was very much like I drew it, but wrote it as a drawing.
we are also getting into these interesting parts of the comic world, like for the listeners, like the King in Black, a Marvel spinoff about Venom, had a Incredible Hulk book, and that book has no words. They just did all with art and body language. So I think it's just very interesting, like not even for you to like think about like that, but like the idea of there are definitely areas you could do even like a like a 2-book, maybe a 3-book little story of just language. And I think body language, I think it would actually do pretty well somewhere down the road. I don't know when.
Yeah. I mean,
really
comics is expanding too, as far as the audience and what people are looking for and what people are interested in reading, and process. You know, people are interested in learning how comics get made and what to focus on. And so Kickstarter, I think, is partially responsible for that because it's created the stage for more stories, and people are realizing, I think, like I said, a wider audience is starting to realize that, well, it doesn't just have to be Cape stories and Batman and Superman, who are also amazing. I love a Cape story. But I think more people are realizing just how diverse comics can be as a medium.
Right. And then all right, we're going to do a little, not quick fire, but I got some questions for you about, okay, then growing up, who was like the top artist for you in comics? And then also I'd like to hear one, I might not have no reference to what you're talking about, but that is just in art in general. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Who comes to your mind?
Well, comics related, I would say early on as a little kid, Jim Lee was my first introduction to comics. And so that was very formative for me. And then when I was about anywhere between 12 and 15, I want to say, Phil Noto became like a god to me, an art god. So he was, I think, somebody I looked to for a lot of inspiration. So those two would be my comic inspiration, my comic influences. And
is there any way to tell, like, what about Jim? Besides, I know Jim Lee's the man, but the idea of what is something that he does that made you go like, I have a feeling what I could probably answer it for you, but I'd like to hear of like, what does Jim Lee do that set him apart for others for you?
I think it was the energy of his line work. He was so his drawings felt like they could move. And that was something I always wanted to achieve. And I think that that's something I still try to achieve, is that when you look at my work, I want it to seem like, well, this face could turn a little bit, like, and it wouldn't surprise you. Like, that's the goal. And I think Jim Lee does that masterfully.
Yeah, I didn't know the right term, but yes, I was gonna say you have a very distinct. It goes into the details. So yes, the line work, like I was saying, like just like you put a little even effort of just showing a different nose compared to like the previous volume, like that idea. So yes, I do
Thank
see
you.
that. And then yeah, so we'll get. How about for just art in general that's not comic related?
Let me think. I I would say probably growing up, I was drawn to, I mean, Monet and Manet. A lot of the Impressionists, I think, were big. Um, just because I think mass market, you saw a lot of reproductions of Monet's Water Lilies and Starry Night, Van Gogh. Yeah. I was also really drawn to Manet, who was not quite as impressionistic and a little bit more illustrative in his stuff. He did a lot of scenes of people interacting with each other, or kind of staring into the camera, staring at the viewer. And so I was always kind of drawn to Manet's work as well. And then when I got a little bit older, I started gravitating a little bit more toward illustrators. So I was very interested in Andrew Loomis, Bob Peak, some of these just, I think, masters of illustrating people. And that's where I started. I think that's where I kind of started to realize what I wanted to do was I wanted to draw people. I think and how they interact with each other and their emotions and how they show them and how they hide them. And I was very interested in all that kind of stuff. So.
No, again, I wanted to at least give you the opportunity to express non-comic related. I mean, again, you could have probably said, yeah, I am a big fan of like Daniel Tree. And I was like, oh, that's a real person. Yes, that's a real person.
Shoot, I should have messed with you. No.
I would be like, this sounds great. I'm going to look him up.
Like, Daniel Tree doesn't exist.
No, and then how would I also word it? Have you, I was also looking at because you have it in your little bio, so you have also work coming out for Dark Horse, or is that already out?
Not yet. Yeah, that's actually in works right now. That is a graphic novel that I'm working on with Alex DeCampi and Kelly Fitzpatrick. And so that's very different from Resonant. It'll be a different style. And it's a YA story. So it's really all ages. I think it appeals to a wide variety of age groups, but probably somewhere in the 14 and up or 12 and up range. But it's modern fantasy. So it's magic returning to our world. So you get plopped down in, an urban setting, a city setting, and it's a year after magic has suddenly started springing up in our world. And it's people kind of trying to adjust to something that's very scary. Like we think of magic in an external sense as being wondrous and interesting, but in this world, it's dangerous. And the ways in which governments and city governments and federal governments have responded to this thing that can't be explained and can't be controlled is a strong theme in the story.
And out of curiosity, also, when you say YA, so like it's going to come out straight as a graphic novel? It's not like an issue by issue thing?
I don't believe so. As at this point, my understanding was that it'll be all released at once. So, and it's a big one. It's a big boy. So it'll be about 300 pages. So you'll get plenty of story.
No, that's cool. And then obviously I have young adults coming in.
Nice.
And also I think they would like to. That'd be pretty cool to check it out once I see more, because again, it's very hard to find. Because I was like, all right, I'll just Google that, and like Dark Horse, like who knows yet? Like, okay, like, oh,
yeah,
boy.
it's in the works, and so hopefully next year we'll have news on that. It's over half done at this point. We've been chipping away at it for a little while, and yeah, I think it's a really special story. I think people will be really into it. It's about magic, but it's also about, there's a big family element to it and sort of continuing your life, even though chaos is kind of ensuing. That there's a very domestic sense to the book, but also
Yeah.
very big, broad, dragons and and crazy bows that talk and that kind of stuff. So it's a cool
Awesome.
story. Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
And then what would be another thing I was going to ask? I was going to ask because I think I know, just judging by your character and stuff. Obviously, you like. Of course, it's cool to be a person who draws, superhero books and stuff. Uh, would you? Who would be like your dream superhero? As like if you got to like Skylar's going to be the person who does a 12-issue run for Marvel or DC, or like there's also ones coming out from through different other publishers, but like from the big two, which character of theirs would you like to say I did a full, run of them?
I think a dream project, because I'm a big spy story person, is I would want to do Black Widow. Although Black Widow has been done by masters, so I don't know if I would want to follow it. Like Somni, Phil Noto has done Black Widow. Elena Casagrande is doing Black Widow right now. She's been like, her arcs recently have been just stellar stories. But maybe when I'm feeling a little, I don't know. That would be my dream, would be Black Widow, but I'm also a little sheepish about it because she's been done so well, especially recently.
Yeah, I understand. I totally get that because obviously you want to, but also you respect the history that it has
Right.
been there.
For sure.
Also, just more for behind the veil. So you did She-Hulk for the Women's of Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
What was your character in the DC Pride one? Because again, this is the digital release, but I gotta wait till tomorrow to go pick it up.
Yeah. I did The Question, Renee Montoya with Vita Ayala. So
I have to go pick up that one too because of also she just had she's part of the Other History of DC Universe Part 4 of the
nice.
bigger books with John Ridley. I'm like, oh, that's a lot of
nice.
question to look up, but no, cool. And then also, how would I word it? Because I like to know. So I think you have that character. So spy. So that pilot, if you went into Kickstarter, would you make like a spy?
Yeah. Well, the two women that I've been sharing recently, that's a spy story. So yeah, yeah. That's it's sort of a spy versus spy erotic thriller story.
Is it harder for you to draw the idea or to do a little bit of writing for your drawings?
Labor wise, it's harder to draw because I can think up what I want it to look like, but I may not actually be able to achieve it. That's something I think a lot of artists will also attest to, is sometimes our mind's eye is more talented than our hands. So I think drawing it is harder. But then there's another element of you've got to come up with the idea, the idea and the story and the pacing and where you want it to go. Like that's also really challenging. I like doing both, honestly, if I could do a little bit of both, which is why I did I showed the little teaser, because that was very much this is a scene that I want written and I want to play out, but I could see it more than I wanted to write it. And that's kind of, I think I've talked with other artists who have that as well, where you kind of write in pictures.
Yeah.
Because that's where our mind is so much of the time, is we're thinking about how to tell the story visually more than we are verbally.
Yeah, no. And yeah, that's pretty good. And then also, I guess to more leave it on the idea of, is there anything that in the comic industry today that you feel should be more highlighted or maybe addressed, or like, is there any things that are maybe overshadowed right now that people should check out? Or even like like you said, the topic at hand, like, letters or some colorists, because also but letters in particular, because I've heard this story, and also I did see something on Twitter, but it's not my story to tell and talk about. But the idea of some things are overshadowed from other things, or also like that's how kind of like how this, like, I don't want to say like that, like DC Pride or even like the Asian thing. book. It's more to highlight these things that have been overshadowed, but like, I'm more just curious of like, is there any other topics that should be highlighted more as well?
Specifically story related or creator
It
related,
could be.
or
I was more. I am. I like to for you to feel like you can spill tea, but also I do not want to ruin your check. See what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So obviously, if
Yeah.
there's something that's off top, like is the does the comic industry still needs to keep moving forward how they're showing in the
Hmm.
background? You know what I'm saying? Or is there
Hmm.
any, or is it looking like it's doing pretty good right now? I'm trying to catch a fly in my camera.
um, I mean, I think comics is a lot of people will say this, and I tend to agree. I think we're in a golden age of comics right now. Just with the amount of stories that are available and the variation of those stories and the different kinds of creators who are making them and the platforms that you can find them on. So I think that's a very positive thing that's happening right now because you can find comics digitally, yeah, webtoon. You can find them on Kickstarter. You can find them on people's Patreons. Like, and so because we have that wider stage, you're getting more interesting stories. You're getting more diverse stories. So I think that's a very positive thing. There's always going to be pushback to that kind of progress too. So that's another issue I think you're going to run into with any, uh, especially media related, any sort of media related endeavor. There are people who want what they had when they were growing up. So they don't want to see the broader stories. They don't want to see the more diverse stories. And, you know, the best we can do is keep pushing forward,
Yeah. Yep.
regardless of that. Because the Cape stories are still there. You know, the Cape stories are still there. The comics from the 70s, 80s, 90s, like those stories are all still there. We don't lose anything by adding more pie to the table. Like
Yeah.
it just means more pie.
Yeah. I'll also, because I can say, because I'm just a person in their own house. Just more the idea of even like how you said capes. There are still way more progress that I've seen in a long time. Like you said, it's a golden age, and like how would I word it? Like maybe even Batman's not the typical white guy that he's always been. That's still a staple, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
But for me as a fan, I'm looking forward to even John Riley's the next Batman that's supposed to be coming out. I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited. I like all the side characters and everything. Like it's okay to have these flourishing because the world changed in a beautiful way.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's time to show, and also I'm glad that there's representation. There are some topics for the big two. I wish they would do like as in maybe not be so scared and just lock in onto for DC. I use them as an example. They lock in on the Bat family.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of DC characters we could have with at least like uh 10 issue runs and just to get a fan base again. But
Mm-hmm.
that's here nor there. But yeah, I would just more say thank you for coming on, Skylar.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much.
And then will you please tell everyone where they can find you? And also, there was also one more thing I saw, like, you know, if you want to even promote your Scout Comics volume I saw in your bio and stuff, you know,
Yeah,
go
yeah.
fire away.
Okay. You can find me at Sky Patridge. That's SKYE Patridge on Twitter and Instagram. Website is skylarpatridge.com. Super simple. And yeah, I've got the DC Pride coming out this week. And then next week on the 16th will be Resonant number 10. We'll be wrapping up that second arc. So please pick it up and maybe we can tell a third arc. And what else do I have? Then volume I'm actually working on today. So that will be what I do when I get off this podcast. And that will, I believe, be coming out in the fall. So that's going to be this year as well.
Do you have like an elevator pitch for that?
Elevator pitch is, let's see. I've said a good one before and now I can't remember what it is. It's basically fighting back against a fascist city state, but they're punk kids. So it's a punk music fueled punch fest.
That's great because also knowing your art and knowing your style, I think it's going to look really awesome in that. the alt scene style of punk,
Definitely.
I think you're definitely the perfect seat for that
Thank you
story.
so much. Yeah, it should be really cool. It starts off, it's a very unique visual book. It starts off black and white, and then as these kids start to realize the kind of power that they have, color starts seeping in. So it's kind of like Pleasantville meets Spider-Verse.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll do it for us. In the sense, also, again, you can also always follow me at Mike Fowler 93, and like we do every week, be good to each other, and I'll catch you next week. Peace.